Welcome to the last video in section 7, relating fractions, decimals, and percents. Here we're going to look at a few word problems involving percents. So the first example may be familiar to you. It says, on a test, Jerry answered 15 out of the 20 questions correctly. What was Jerry's percentage on their test? So since they answered 15 out of 20 correctly, we can write this as a fraction, 15 over 20. Now to change this to a percentage, we can write this over 100. So we ask ourselves, what do we multiply 20 by to get 100? And that would be 5. So multiplying numerator and denominator by 5, I get 75 over 100. And since percent means per 100, that's simply 75%. So we can answer the question by saying that Jerry got 75% on the test. The next example, it says Wendy is driving 150 kilometers to visit her grandparents. If she drove 90 kilometers already, what percentage of the drive did she complete? So she drove 90 out of the 150 kilometers. We'll start out with this fraction. Now if we look at 150, I see that I can't divide by a whole number to make that a denominator of 100. So we have to be a little creative here. I can divide this by 3, giving me 30 over 50. And now, because it's over 50, I can just double this, multiply it by 2, to give me 60 over 100, giving us 60%. So this means that Wendy has completed 60% of the drive to her grandparents' house. Now we have one more example. It says, if Trey ate 52% of the cereal in a box that contained 340 grams, how much cereal is left? Let's begin by estimating. Now, this is something that should always be done, even when the question doesn't ask you to do so. And it's not something that necessarily needs to be written down. Most times you can just do it in your head, which is the point of estimating, making a guess in your head. And if you forget to estimate before you start the problem, you should certainly do it after you're done to see if your answer makes sense. So be sure to keep this practice as part of every problem that you do. Now, I know that 52% is close to 50, which is a half. So let's find a half of 340. Well, a half of 34 is 17. So a half of 340 is 170. So let's figure out the exact amount of cereal that's left. Well, to find a percent of a number, which is what we have here, we have to find 52% of 340. You always change the percent to a decimal first. Then you multiply. You multiply that decimal by how much you have. So let's change 52% to 0.52. Now multiplying that by 340 gives me 176.8. Now comparing that to the estimate we did earlier, you'll see that our answer is very reasonable. Now we're not done yet because this is in fact how much he ate. So if we're looking for how much cereal is left, we now need to subtract how much cereal there was, 340 grams, with how much he ate, 176.8. So now doing that in the calculator, I got 163.2. So now we can say that there's 163.2 grams of cereal left in the box. So that concludes this lesson on fractions, decimals, and percents. Be sure to complete the activities before moving on to the next section.